Tonight, scathing criticism of the Labor Party from one of its factional leaders. Shelley Kovco says her husband's death was a terrible accident.
I think he leant over to clear his weapon, and it's gone.
6 arrested over a major cocaine bust. And the oldest evidence yet for the origin of the species. Good evening, Fiona Crawford with a national edition of ABC News. Control freaks and ruthless leakers. That's the assessment of Federal Labor's factional warriors from one of their own. The veteran Labor Senator and former Minister Robert Ray says the party's factional loyalties are holding it back. But the opposition leader Kim Beazley has dismissed the criticism, saying Labor is well placed to win the next federal election.
Factional politics in the Labor Party is far from child's play. As Kim Beazley toured a childcare centre in Brisbane, in Sydney, Robert Ray was demanding attention.
We must demand that factions reject self-indulgent introspection. We must demand of faction leaders that they put the party's interest ahead of factional supremacy.
A former factional warlord of the Victorian right, Senator Ray had his own in his sights, accusing faction leaders of blocking talented candidates and of being prepared to lose elections to protect their own positions. Not, he says, that factions are bad, just some of those running them, including his successor in the Victorian right, who he likened to the arch-villain in the Doctor Who series.
So whilst we've suffered from the suffocating collaboration of those factional Daleks like Senator Conroy and Senator Carr, the Marks are emerging, the Mark R. Bibb in New South Wales and the Mark Butler in South Australia.
Senator Ray has the best interests of the Labor Party at heart. As I said, I don't agree with all that he's had to say.
Senator Ray's contribution notwithstanding, the opposition leader believes the division in the party is behind him.
We will win the next election because now all members of the Labor Party are setting aside around this country their self-interests, their disagreements with each other, and focusing on their patriotic duty.
But diversion seemed the order of the day, with some in the party hailing a federal court native title decision that the Indigenous Noongar people have proved their claim to native title over metropolitan Perth. Mr Beazley is backing the West Australian government, which may decide to challenge the ruling.
We in Western Australia have negotiated many positive outcomes in native title. We are used to doing it. We do like a bit of clarity while we do it.
The federal government also may challenge the ruling, which it warns could see people excluded from urban open spaces such as parks.
In a major capital city where you do have very extensive areas of parklands, water foreshores, beaches, matters of that sort, you could well find that if a native title claim were found to be a bona fide claim, that means that native title owners would be able to exclude other people from access to those areas.
A decision on any federal challenge will come within the next 21 days. Lyndall Curtis, ABC News, Canberra.
The widow of Private Jake Kovco, Australia's first casualty in Iraq, says she fears her life may never return to normal. In a bid to protect her privacy when she returns home, Shelley Kovco decided to face the media today. She said she believed her husband's fatal shooting was an accident and spoke of how difficult it had been to explain to their children.
Shelley Kovco arrived at today's media conference flanked by her parents and Defence Department staff, and with a simple message. Her husband's death was no suicide, no conspiracy, just a tragic accident.
I think he leant over to clear his weapon, and it's gone.
It was in April this year that Private Jake Kovco was killed by a bullet from his own gun while serving in Iraq. Since then, the bungled repatriation of his body has further traumatised his family, and a board of inquiry into his death has held weeks of hearings, ruling out suicide as a possibility. It will report to the government later in the year, but Shelley Kovco is adamant that other soldiers who were with her husband at the time of his death are not involved.
I've known these guys for years. They were great mates with Jake. I guess it's just the military life, that they're just family. They were like Jake's brothers.
Despite the tragedy her family endured, Shelley Kovco retains a firm belief in her husband and the work he was doing in Iraq. Today she showed off to the media a new tattoo of her husband and said she would support her children if they grew up to join the army too.
Yeah, I'd tell them to go for it. Be proud of what they do, and yeah, Daddy would be very proud.
But for now, Mrs. Kovco says this will be her final public comment on her husband's death, and she's asked for privacy while she rebuilds her life. Alan Sunderland, ABC News.
An aircraft full of passengers about to take off for Singapore, a terrorist alert and a hostage siege. That was the scenario played out last night at Sydney Airport during an exercise to test state and federal security forces. It's all part of preparations for next year's APEC Leaders Summit.
The scenario, a jumbo jet at Sydney Airport, fuelled up and about to leave for Singapore. 4 terrorists take passengers hostage and demand the release of comrades overseas. 250 police were mobilised for last night's exercise, testing new unified state and Commonwealth airport security measures.
We've got to do the very best we can to try and replicate what we think we might have to face. But you'll never get it right, because the events will be quite unexpected.
After negotiations break down, the state's tactical assault group lead the mock attack to retake the aircraft. The results of the exercise are still being assessed, though organisers say nothing major went wrong.
3 hostages were killed, 3 terrorists were killed, and 1 police officer was killed. Now, thankfully, it is only a scenario, but that's probably what could happen in a real-life situation.
Exercise Blue Luminary, to run over the next 3 weeks, is part of security preparations for the APEC meetings next year, expected to bring 10,000 delegates to Australia. After police took the lead last night, it's the turn of the Defence Forces to show their wares tonight. Sydney Airport says the after-hours exercise will cause no inconvenience to regular passengers.
3 of Australia's biggest sporting codes have united to demand greater flexibility on how they sell their television rights. Rugby league, AFL and soccer bosses want more of a say on the number of games that can be seen on pay TV and how many can go on free-to-air. Here's Peter Wilkins.
It's not often you get the heavyweights of the NRL, the AFL and the Football Federation in one room, but today they were making a united stand over television rights. Under current anti-siphoning laws, listed sports codes can deal only exclusively with free-to-air networks first, and most don't show all the action on offer.
The free-to-air networks need to use what they buy or give it back to the sports so the sports can decide whether there's an alternative.
The use it or lose it concept in its implementation has to be, they have to walk the talk.
The AFL has been lamenting the demise of the 24-hour Fox Footy channel after the new rights holders, channels 7 and 10, failed to come to terms with the pay TV channel to broadcast games.
We've been excluded from dealing with the pay TV operator because of this regime, and perhaps the Fox Footy channel could have survived.
The Australian Opals are through to the World Basketball Championship semi-finals after a comfortable victory over France. The full array of talent was on show early, though they couldn't quite shake off the French. But by half-time, with Penny Taylor going around the opposition and Lauren Jackson through, the Opals had opened up a 14-point lead. Jackson secured 19 points and Taylor 18 in a 79-66 win. Australia will have to beat India tomorrow to make the final of the Tri-Series in Malaysia after a stunning collapse by the West Indies against India. At none for 44, chasing a mediocre Indian total of 162, the West Indies should have won in a canter. But a decision to shuffle the batting order to give underperformers a chance to shine backfired.
That's out. That's Plummy LBW.
In the unaccustomed role of number 9, Brian Lara did his best to get his team home with a quick-fire 40, but just ran out of partners. The one consolation for the West Indies in losing by 16 runs, they'd already qualified for the final. The world's number 1 golfer Tiger Woods has been taken out of his comfort zone on the eve of the Ryder Cup. Woods lashed out at an Irish magazine which falsely linked his Swedish wife Elin to pornographic websites.
it's hard to be very diplomatic about this when you got so much emotion involved. When my wife, yes, she has been a model prior, and she did do some bikini photos, but to link her to porn websites and the such is unacceptable.
And Liverpool's 2-0 win over Newcastle was highlighted by a stunning goal from Spaniard Xavi Alonso. Newcastle's stand-in keeper Steve Harper won't forget his slip or the end result, as Alonso topped his previous effort earlier this year against Luton Town.
Now let's take a look at the weather. In the capital cities today, Sydney was cloudy, reaching a top of 26, Canberra fine and 20, Adelaide fine and 22, Brisbane smoky with a top of 25, Darwin was fine and 31, Hobart fine but just 14, Melbourne was hazy and 20. The satellite picture shows most of the continent cloud-free due to a weak ridge extending across the nation's centre. On the synoptic chart, there's a low and trough system moving across Western Australia and a cold front in the Bight. Both systems are moving east tomorrow, bringing some cloud and windy conditions for southeastern Australia. Rain tomorrow for the south of the continent, with showers in a number of centres there likely. So looking ahead to tomorrow, it'll be fine and windy in Sydney with a top of 30, similar in Canberra 26, a few showers for Adelaide with 18, fine in Brisbane and 28, fine in Darwin 32, windy and showery in Melbourne 22, and a shower also in Perth with a top of 20. You've been watching ABC News. Before we go, let's take another look at the main headlines. A Labor insider says the party can't win office until its factions are reformed. Jake Kovco's widow appeals for privacy while saying her husband's death was just a terrible accident. And Coles announces a $1.1 billion profit but says 2,500 jobs will have to go. And that's ABC National News for this Thursday. We'll leave you tonight with the annual release of the endangered flatback turtle hatchlings on a Darwin beach. Thanks for joining us for now. Goodbye.
Due to industrial action, we are unable to bring you the scheduled program, so please enjoy our standby program instead. We apologise for any inconvenience.